Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Labour, the Committee Chairman, and for information this meeting is live on the Council's YouTube website. Right, can I do apologies for absence first, please?
Apologies from Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. Can I do declarations of interest on tonight's agenda? Councillor Higgins?
After taking legal advice, I'll be withdrawing from the first item.
So that's Woodbridge House, yes? Okay. Councillor Yarrow?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Item 12, Ruislip High School. As I was responsible for building the original school, I don't think it's in the right interest to be present to take a vote on this, so I'll be leaving the room.
Okay. I'm also going to declare an interest in item 12, Ruislip High School, as its current Chair of Governors, so I shall also be leaving the room at that point, and therefore Councillor Edwards will chair the meeting. Well, I was hoping for it, so we're all good. Okay. The minutes of the meeting, 15th November in the pack. Can I take those as read? Thank you. The matters on tonight's agenda are as per the published agenda. There is no Part 2 items. They're all in public. No items have been withdrawn. The only change to published running order, given the declarations that have just come, is that item 12 will now be the last item taken by committee. Well, just, you know, Chairman's privilege. It means I get a slightly earlier evening, yes. Okay. Let me just do some bits of administration. If the fire alarm goes off, we're not expecting a test, so we are therefore working its real. Fire exit is that way, and through the next doors and down the stairs, or that way behind me. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least to silent? If you require toilets, they're out the door and round the corner. I know various of you are here for various items. We have a very crowded agenda tonight. I would very much appreciate if you are leaving after your item, and I'm sure you don't want to hear all of this, that you leave quietly and don't congregate just beyond the door, because it makes it very difficult for us to continue, and we do need to keep this flowing tonight. There are 3 petition items on my agenda. They are the first 3 items, 6, 7 and 8. I will deal with item 6 in a moment, but let me talk about petitions in general. Petitioners get 5 minutes to address us, 4 minutes green, 1 minute amber, and when it gets to red I will stop you. Members may ask questions of petitioners, they may not. That's entirely at their discretion. Ward councillors can also address us, and for those where there are petitions in objection, applicants or their agents can also have the right to address us. I do have discretion on how many petitions I take on an item. I'm exercising that tonight in respect of items 6 and 7. 7, there are 2 petitions in objection, so that will be 1 set of 5-minute speaking rights, please. And in the case of item 6, I would hear the petition in objection. The petition in favour has come via the applicants, and therefore they have a right to speak to us anyway, so we'll hear their views as part of that presentation. Item 6 is also very familiar to this committee because it's been before us twice before. So I think we're fairly knowledgeable about it. I see Councillor Cooper in the room, so I'm presuming she intends to speak on item 6. Councillor Agbew-Walana was intending to speak on item 7, but has had a domestic incident and is unable to do so, but I have a set of text that he would have given us, so I shall share that with you at the appropriate time. Okay, let's just, voting tonight, the voting members of committee, obviously those who've declared interest will be leaving the room for the various items and therefore cannot vote. I'll start down in the far right hand corner. I've got Councillor Stead, Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Edwards, and I've got Councillor Dillon, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Duncan. Sorry, my voice is going already and that's not good. We've got a long way to go. I've got the planning team slightly larger than usual because they're sharing presenting duties tonight. Alan Tilley will be taking the highways issues. Zainab Hajjad Ismail is one of the presenters, and Ed Lawton is the other. James Roger, most of you will know, is the head of planning, gives me advice. Luke Taylor is from Democratic Services and is my clerk. And Van Egan is our legal advisor. There are feedback forms, I believe. The orange forms I can just spy in the back corner if you want to give feedback to Democratic Services on tonight. But without anything further, I'm going to pass to item 6, which is Woodbridge House, New Windsor Street, Uxbridge. Ed, I think it's yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 6 on the agenda is a resubmission for the proposed new almshouses at Woodbridge House. The application is for the demolition of the existing almshouse complex and erection of 22 almshouse units and 8 units for persons of state pensionable age. 23 of the units will be built to M42 standard of accessibility with fully M43 bathrooms. 7 units will be built to full M43 standard. Also proposed are an office meeting room, residence cafe social room, and associated parking and landscaping. Members will recall the previous application and the discussion surrounding whether or not the proposed scheme provided sufficient public benefit to outweigh the loss of the heritage asset. So if I can take members through the proposed plans. This is the site location plan, the constraints plan. This is the layout of the existing building and the elevations. And this is about the proposed new scheme. Members are well aware of this proposal, having seen it twice already. So I wanted to include this plan because it shows where this scheme is slightly larger than the previous proposal. So it's only a very slight tweak to the proposal, and it's considered to have a minimal impact on neighbours compared to the previous proposal. These are the elevations of the proposed scheme. This is a shadow analysis which shows the impact of the scheme on neighbouring properties. If I could draw members' attention to the lynch, which is to the west. Here, this is the existing scenario and proposed, and again in the evenings. So this is a winter solstice. This is the spring equinox. The summer solstice, and the summer solstice, obviously the shadows are far smaller. And then the autumn equinox. Members will have been aware of this because it's included within the design and access statement. This is a bird's eye view proposal, and this is photographs of the existing building as is, and the surrounding area. The proposed scheme now proposes an increase of 2 additional almshouses over the previous scheme, which provided 2 flats for staff. Critically, the scheme also achieves M43 bathrooms to all units, as raised at the previous planning committee, and which the council's access officers confirmed, having reviewed the amended proposals. Members will recall that previous application was refused as members felt it failed to achieve the public benefits necessary to outweigh the loss of the heritage asset. Given that the current proposal now achieves a very high level of accessibility and provides 2 additional almshouse units, as well as the other benefits stated in the officer's report, the application is recommended for approval. Members will note that there are 3 addendum items to this application, including a petition of objection, an additional letter of objection, and proposed addition to the wording of condition 20 to clarify that windows must remain obscure glazed and not overlook the lynch to the west. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll take the petition objection. Ms Cantwell. If you'd like to just press the button on the middle, it'll make the microphone live. Lovely, thank you very much.
When you're ready.
Good evening, councillors, chairman and members of the public. My name is Annie Cantwell and I've been nominated to speak on behalf of the residents of the Rockingham Road Conservation Area. In John Betjeman's famous poem, he wished bombs had rained down on Slough, not Uxbridge, because then it was a pretty market town with a heart and a soul until the late 60s and 70s, when a community was ripped apart by development and local residents lived in fear of their beloved homes being repossessed by a compulsory purchase order. A great many people suffered this misery, and in the early 90s, Cross Street, known locally as Marjack's Roundabout, burnt to the ground in a mysterious arson attack. Uxbridge was never to recover from this loss, opening the way for property developers to gain free rein on development, creating an architectural mess. History repeats itself, And residents feel they have been betrayed by Hillingdon Council into believing that the creation of a conservation area would provide protection against unwanted developments. We, the residents, are objecting to the proposed demolition and redevelopment of the existing Woodbridge house. We believe the plans are disrespectful to the local residents' views, disrespectful to the local Victorian conservation area, whilst local residents are in favour of improving conditions for tenants of the almshouses. We object to the loss of the heritage asset. We object to the increase in height of the almshouses. We are very concerned about the effect on parking. We are also very concerned about the Trust's history of removing housing from elderly residents. I remember when the properties on the Lynch were converted into flats for people on low incomes, the elderly, the key workers. These were downgraded to private market rentals, which appears to be the direction the Trust is now taking. The Trust has further shown a lack of compassion, as shown by a local eviction of a 90-year-old lady from the Lynch because she owned a cat. I would also like to bring your attention to the plight of one of the almshouses residents who lives in the flat roof extension facing towards the Lynch. They have lived there for the last 24 years and will reach the grand age of 91 in December. They have been told by the Trust that they are a private tenant and therefore the Trust has no obligation to rehouse them. If planning permission is granted, surely when the Trust gained planning permission for this extension, it was on the grounds that it would benefit the almshouses, not the private market. Hopefully the Hillingdon Housing Department will be able to rehome them. Residents have consistently raised their objections to these issues and the lack of consultation during the planning phase. A sham consultation was held after the plans were pretty much finalised and the Trust was very aggressive in keeping their plans unchanged. Whilst the Trust has pushed for this development by increasing their existing almshouses by 2, after a lot of dispute, the proposed complex ignores the adjacent connecting properties to Woodbridge House, which surely would be an important contribution in terms of living space for people over the age of 65. However, these properties on the Lynch are treated in the same way as the proposed private rentals, which will effectively cause the increase from a 2-storey design to a 3-storey design. We also note that whilst this development is for the over 65s and planned lifetime homes, there will be, again, a priority given to private rentals rather than wardens to support the elderly. Let's not let history repeat itself. Let's not lose our heritage asset. Let's not build more homes for the elderly only for them to be downgraded to private rentals at a later date. Let's put in the protection for the elderly for whatever plans are decided, and let's have a building that is fit for purpose and respectful to the local residents and the local conservation area. Thank you for listening.
Okay, do members have any questions? No? No? Okay, thank you very much. On behalf... whoever's speaking on behalf of the applicant for this one? No? Okay, fair enough. If I move to Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everyone. You have heard from our residents that they are in favour of good quality almshouses that meet needs. They have made that absolutely and abundantly clear tonight. They are in favour of sensitive development that respects the nature of this conservation area. But they are against unsympathetic development that not just detracts from the Uxbridge conservation area, it actually undermines it by wholly demolishing the key building and replacing it with something so different that it causes substantial harm to the conservation area. So this application is about a balance of judgment. our own head of conservation states, it is considered that its significance, the almshouse, is such that its demolition would be a great loss, not only in itself, but to the character of the conservation area. This tells us clearly that this is not just about one building more or less. It is the key focal point. It is about how we retain the integrity of the whole of the Rockingham Bridge conservation area. It is my view that this has not been accorded sufficient weight in this application. I therefore urge you to consider either, and preferably, to refuse the application on the grounds that the benefit of this particular design does not outweigh the substantial damage that would result for the conservation area. At the very least, I would ask you to consider deferring a decision until a meeting has been set up with interested parties, developers, trustees, residents, officers, as you please, to build on the common ground that you have heard about tonight and, as reasonable people, to find an amicable way forward. Thank you for listening.
Do members have any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. I'll open this one up. It's obviously been before us twice before. On previous occasions, members have come to the conclusion that whilst the loss of the existing building was regrettable, the public benefit, providing we achieved it, was an acceptable compromise. This proposal before us does increase the number of almshouses, and that is legally conditioned, as well as, of course, making sure they've all got accessible bathrooms, which is where we asked to be on this application. With that said, members' views, please. Councillor Edwards, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I am pleased that this application has come back with an enhancement of the public benefit. And as a consequence, whereas I had considerable reservations about the loss of the heritage asset without sufficient public benefit coming forward, that is no longer the case. Now, I have heard from the petitioners and understand the argument about the properties for market rent, and that was also a reservation. But the case was made quite powerfully, I think, in the previous application about the financial viability of this overall development. Should, in the absence of those market rents. So whilst this is in many regards an imperfect solution, it is a substantial step forward from the present position and present residences of some very vulnerable people. And because we are going to receive a significant uplift in those residential standards, I would support this application and would be happy if it maybe not too early to go with the officer's recommendation.
Well, let's see what other people have, but I'll hold that for a moment. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we all agonised over this. We do recognise that it is a loss of a very distinctive building in the conservation area, but sadly, when we went round, so many of the units could not be used because they were not accessible by the elderly people they were designed for. So we could not have, we could not justify keeping that because it's not serving the purpose for which it was built. I do think that I have some concerns about this development. One is that having had concerns about the disabled provision and that it meet the best standard possible that can be achieved in this, we're only providing 2 disabled parking spaces. Now, we saw more than 2 flats when we were there ourselves, where people were bedbound in hospital because they couldn't access those floors. So there probably are other residents, and I don't know the number that there are, and I'm just concerned about the level of disabled parking provision for elderly people. Yes, they're going into almshouses, but if they're at all able to be active, to get out and to still have some kind of independence and independent mobility, we should be supporting that. And that's why I was just as shocked to see this paragraph in the section 106 that future occupants will not be able to apply for car parking permits. So where are they to park if there are going to be people here. Presumably there will be elderly people who will not be able to drive and will not have a car, and that won't apply to them. We're not talking about everybody in these units having a car, but surely if there are elderly people there, living there, who do, and it's their one means of getting out and about, they should be able to apply for car parking permits. So I think that is, well, I'm opposed to that part of this this agreement, if I can put it that way. I know that there have been previous decisions about was it legal for us to bar people from having this. It's quite a blanket sort of rule, but then there have been subsequent legal judgments about it. But regardless of that, I think just us as a planning committee considering a facility specifically designed for older people who are becoming more frail in health and more limited in mobility, this is an important consideration.
Okay. Do any other members have views on this one, Councillor Oswald?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I think the case has been well put by petitioner, ward councillor and 2 members of the planning committee. We did struggle a bit with this when it came before us before, but I think as far as the access is concerned, that's been dealt with, and I'm quite happy with that. As far as the parking spaces are concerned, I don't know that would be a reason to refuse. I don't think it is. I don't think that's strong enough, and I wouldn't want to refuse it on just on that. But maybe we could get that changed. Maybe we could have a word with developers and see whether or not those disabled spaces could be increased. I don't know. I'd leave that to the plan.
Well, so 2 things I would say. The car parking permit thing is in there, and again, this is a balance again, and I understand where Councillor Duncan is coming from. The officer logic for it, and which I understand also, is that obviously what we don't, when we do a development that's got limited parking, you don't want the overspill parking to then further inflame residents' issues around them. Now, Jane, the head of planning is quietly at my side here. We think it is possible to get slightly more car parking spaces on this than is on those plans. So I think that is a possibility. But that's why the permits thing is in there. It's members' judgment they want it left or not.
So can I just say a point on the permits? The way we've worded it, the recommendation at the moment, it's would apply to all potential tenants, but I think I'm right in saying that we have granted permits to blue badge holders before, so we could vary it to be slightly clearer that it's not seeking to exclude permits from blue badge holders.
Thank you very much for that guidance, but I would hope that the blue badge holders would be having a disabled parking space because they are recognised through all public systems that deal with this kind of thing as being a disabled driver. So I would hope that...
You probably know, Duncan, that one of the issues is if we up all of those spaces, we may reduce the total. So it's a bit. That's why I think the head of planning thinks he can get some more in.
If members want to look at the ground floor and site plan on page 270 in their plan packs, I'd say it's not our practice to completely redesign schemes, but if it's a very, very simple change, in the past members have delegated authority to me. You'll note that there's 8 parking bays, and then there's also a bicycle and mobility scooter store. Now, if that bicycle and mobility scooter store were relocated, and it in itself is going to be quite a small structure, so its relocation shouldn't cause any untoward issues. That would give the option of either having a 9th space or increasing the 8, so you increase the number of the disabled parking bays, and you'd probably be able to gain at least a couple more disabled parking bays in there if you did that.
Could I suggest a way forward with this? If I'm sensing members correctly, there is nobody who's pushing to refuse this at the moment. I think the issue with car parking is there's certainly possible to get. The reality is the bulk are probably going to be non-drivers by kind of definition. And the head of planning thinks there are ways that he could improve the plan and get a little more on there or a little more disabled. And I think a conversation with the applicants might well reveal how many people currently have spaces. Because I think at the moment when we visited, I don't think there were that many residents had car parking. I think it was mainly staff. Then it comes to the other question of whether we leave, and I think the suggestion regarding blue badges and permits is an entirely sensible one. So then that gives two sets of options. So if that satisfies those issues, I think we could be getting there. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to finish what I was getting into before, but some of it's already been dealt with. It has got a PTL rating of 4, so that's helpful. Links are pretty good. I wasn't going to mention parking permits. I was just worried about the disabled parking spaces, and I think that's more or less been dealt with anyway. So I think it's, with that in mind, plus one or two other things, I think it's certainly a much better scheme than we had before, and I'll go as far as to move the officer's recommendation with those changes. Thank you, Chairman.
And a seconder, so that's good. Councillor Yarra and then Councillor Stead, and unless there's anything new, I'm going to draw this one to a close.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Duncan said, and that was that we discussed this long and hard at the last time, and we came very close to approving it at the last time, providing they could agree to make the rooms disabled compliant. And we didn't get that assurance, and so consequently it was not approved. They have done that now. It is compliant. There are a few minor things that have been mentioned. I don't think we have any alternative but having got close to it before than to agree with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. As probably expected, a lot of things I was going to say has already been said. But I actually did a visit to the Arms House when a few of us went there, and the conditions those people, elderly people I assume, were just not right. There's nowhere near the spec that we should be. I'm not a builder or a developer or anything like that, but looking at what they needed doing, I don't think they could do it without huge disruption to the people who are living there. And I think the best option is for us is to go with the officer's recommendations and demolish the place. Thank you.
Okay, so to summarise, I have a proposer and a seconder to support the officer's recommendation subject to two changes: a delegation to the head of planning to review the parking disabled spaces on site and see what improvements he can achieve, and also that the agreement to remove parking permits does not include blue badge holders. Those were the two that we suggested. All those in favour now please clearly show. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. I move on. We need Councillor Higgins back wherever he is. Could you please, David? Okay, I now move to item 7, page 37, Comag, Tavistock Road, Yearsley. This is your one, I think.
Thank you, Chair. So, item agenda 7 relates to a site referred to as Comag. It's the proposal is for the demolition of existing buildings classed as B8 and replacement with 110 units over 3 stories, 4 stories, 5, 6 and 8. Just taking members through the site. This is the application site. It's this corner. So members at committee will be aware that the eastern part of this area is currently being developed. It's a site formerly known as Padcroft Works. This is seen as phase 2 of that, and this relates to this corner site here. At the moment it's occupied by a part 2, part 3 story building occupied by Comag. It was vacated yesterday, but they were specialisers in magazine distribution. The application would demolish this site and replace it. So this is taking members through the existing site. This is Winnock Road. Winnock Road runs to the northwestern part of the site, and Tavistock Road runs to the southern part of the site. This is a view from Bentick Road, which runs to the north of the site. Some views along Winnock Road, Tavistock Road, and of the existing Comag building, which is situated directly to the rear of Winnock Road. I've measured the distance between the existing Comag building and the rear of the terrace, particularly number 2 Winnock Road. The distance between Comag, the part 2 element of Comag, is 3.6 metres and 8 metres. The 3-storey element of Comag is situated 8 metres away from the terrace. So this application was originally submitted in August 2017, and the application was for 116 units and a 9-storey building along Tavistock Road, a 6-storey building turning the corner, and a 4 and 3-storey building on Winnock Road. Officers have worked with the applicant to reduce the scale and enhance design of the proposed scheme. So this is now an 8-storey building on Tavistock Road. It reduces down to 6 stories along Tavistock Road. As it turns the corner, this is then 5 stories. This is the original proposal, looking at it from the corner, and this is the revised. So it's reduced by a story. There is a 6-storey element as it turns, which is a transition piece between the 8-storey and the 5-storey here. And on Winnock Road, this is then reduced to 3 stories, and the proposed design has been revised to refer to terrace, so it's to look as contemporary terrace homes as opposed to a flatted development. So, so here are some plans. This is the basement plan. The proposal includes 1-for-1 car parking space. There's at ground floor level, there is additional car parking, 29 spaces. There's a community facility situated on the corner of Tavistock Road. This is 250 square metres. At podium level, there is communal amenity space. This is there's a split level, so ground floor level on Tavistock Road is it's ground floor level at where the podium is here, first floor level. So just this, members can see it reduces in scale. And there is a landscape proposal, so there will be some children's play space in this corner. The communal amenity area meets policy requirements. These are proposed elevations. And finally, CGI of the proposal. So talking through some of the other aspects of the scheme. the density is in accordance, the proposed density comfortably is within the density limits of the site proposed by the London Plan. The proposal provides 84 2-beds, 16 1-beds and 10 3-beds, so it's an appropriate mix in this location. The proposal will not impact the West Drayton Garden City, which is located 210 metres to the south of the site across the railway line. The existing buildings are considered to be dated and do not relate well to the area. They're also underused. The proposal would make good use of the site and is also compatible with the surrounding use as residential. The overall height is comparable to the approved Padcroft scheme to the northeast. There is a slight height difference by 1.2 metres, and this is to accommodate sprinkler systems. Amenity space has been, the amenity of the existing residential units on Tavistock Road and Winnock Road have been carefully considered. Yes, it breaches the 45-degree line of number 2. However, overall it enhances the space because, as I mentioned to members, currently the 2-storey element sits 3.6 metres away. This building would be situated approximately 4.5 metres away, and also the area to the rear will open up. The daylight and sunlight study submitted with the application verifies that there would be, the amenity space as well as the units would pass. There is no impact on the existing residential terraces along Winnock Road, and the proposal will also not have an impact on the residents of Tavistock Road. Finally, it also, in terms of the amount of communal amenity space and private amenity space that's being provided to residential units, that complies with both the London Plan and the local plan. A transport study has been carried out, and the modelling, my transport colleague will elaborate later on, but modelling has been undertaken of the Tavistock Road junction, and this has included the 315 unit scheme, which is referred to as Padcroft Works. The proposed affordable housing is policy compliant at 35%, and it's also in accordance with a mix that's appropriate within our local plan, or sought in our local plan. So overall, the application for redevelopment of this site provides 110 residential units, community facility, and is a well-considered scheme. It would vastly improve the quality of this site and enhance the street scene. Good quality amenity space is provided. The appropriate car parking levels are provided. It's a contemporary design approach, and committee, this is a policy compliant scheme. Officer's recommendation is for approval. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Is there an addendum on this one?
Yes. I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum sheet. Included within the addendum are additional comments that were received after the committee report was written. There is a late representation from the neighbouring Tavistock Works. Officers' response to this is that this application features a flank wall on, which is on this side, on Tavistock Road, and it would not prejudice the neighbouring site from coming forward. There is a good site coverage between built and unbuilt areas. It provides for amenity space. It provides car parking at policy compliant levels, and again, for that reason, it's recommended approval in urban design terms. There is also a representation in response to the adjacent landowners' objections from Redrow, and there's clarifications on conditions. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Whoever's speaking in objection on this one. You press the red button when you're ready, and if you just state your name as you start, so my clerk's got it for the record.
Good evening, Chair. My name is Alan Atkinson, and I speak on behalf of the 90-plus residents who have signed one of the petitions, as well as many other residents who are deeply concerned at the proposal to the development of the Comex site into high-density housing with one block of 8 stories, which will be physically higher than that being built on the adjacent site. The proposed development would both overpowering to neighbours and overdevelopment of the site. It would create a scheme totally out of character when compared with the neighbouring Victorian and Edwardian villas, which will be totally overlooked for the first time. Residents refute the assumption made that there would be no adverse harm to the amenities and adjoining occupiers and no loss of light or overlooking. As evidence of this, the building currently being erected by the same company is indeed causing considerable concern to the local residents, who are both shocked and visually threatened by its overpowering and dominant appearance. No other building in the area is of that height and bulk to match the current and proposed new development. The Planning Committee report for the current application says that physical measures must be needed to try to prevent overlooking in Winnock Road. Now we have a new application whose height will be even taller than the Padcroft development, even though the Comac site is much closer to the significant number of low-lying suburban villas. In addition, the assertion made that the traffic from the proposed site, if developed, would be less than the current traffic capacity of the Comac site is both simplistic and unbelievable if one looks at the problem in an informed and sensible way. The Tavistock Road and Station Road junction is already gridlocked for large portions of the working day, this before the neighbouring development is finished and occupied. The development and its 110 units of houses will merely spill out its cars into the same piece of road which is already at a standstill with heavily polluting traffic, which is already polluted, as the council's air audits will attest. Many local residents have approached me as a committee member of the Garden City Residents Estate Association to present the case for the refusal of the development. It should not proceed due to significant harm it would do to adjoining occupiers as well as residents further away who are currently being faced with the overpowering Padcroft development and are already subject to daily traffic gridlock at the Tavistock Road and Station Road junction. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse the application on the grounds of considerable overdevelopment, overlooking, bulk and severe traffic and associated pollution problems it would produce. I suggest a site visit by the Planning Committee to see firsthand the problem this development is causing the local people. I thank you, the committee.
Do members have any questions? Okay. Who's speaking on behalf of the applicant?
No, it's another resident.
No, you've had your 5, have you?
No.
We're still on green.
There's 1 minute left. 1 minute left. I will hold it to 1 minute.
Well, if you put the green light on for 1 minute, that's fine.
He has.
My name's Jean Dixon. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Useley. We are horrified. We're horrified to find our local streets targeted for high-rise, high-density housing units which are not central London. We're a village here. We're Useley. We're not happy with this at all. We're intensely threatened by this huge block going up already. It overlooks my bedroom window. It's oppressive. The lights are shining on at night. It's only up to 5 stories. We feel that we're extremely angry. We are not happy with the sneaky way that the planning permission for the Redrose site has already gone through. We didn't know it was coming. We didn't have good consultation. What on earth is the planning department doing? They are not consulting with local residents. They are not talking to us. And all of the people that signed the petition were furious about this. We also feel that the traffic assessment is a bit weak, bearing in mind that Tavistock Road is a rat run. There was a huge accident along there recently. We want you to do a site visit.
You've had your minute, okay. I think I got that. Can I have whoever's speaking on behalf of the applicant for this one? Yep, okay. When you're ready.
Chair, members of the committee, good evening. My name is Tim Sturgis and I'm a town planner at GVA speaking in support of the application on behalf of Redrow. The application before you this evening is a result of extensive input from your officers. It has been the subject of rigorous pre-application discussion and a series of revisions following submission. The officer's report outlines the robust assessment that has taken place in order to recommend the application for approval. I would therefore like to take this opportunity to outline the key benefits of the scheme and to provide further clarification on the issues raised this evening. The application site comprises vacant brownfield land, providing the opportunity to deliver significant regeneration benefits for Useley and West Drayton. The scheme proposes 110 new homes, comprising a mix of 1, 2 and 3 beds, with private amenity space which exceeds Hillingdon standards. It will deliver investment in local infrastructure, including the provision of an on-site community facility, improvements to the highway and street network, and a financial contribution to improvements to the Grand Union Canal. It will also provide the Council with the ability to further invest in its infrastructure through a SIL contribution. As part of their obligations, Redrow has agreed to provide 35% affordable housing, comprising a tenure mix as requested by your housing officers. The scheme will deliver 38 new affordable homes, including 9 3-beds, which will contribute to affordable family accommodation. The scheme proposes a policy-compliant level of car parking at 1 space per home, and this includes 11 wheelchair-accessible parking spaces and 22 active and 22 passive electric vehicle charging points. This is in addition to the 7 lockable motorcycle parking spaces and 218 secure cycle parking spaces. We have listened to the concerns raised, having met with residents and councillors, and have actively sought to respond through the amendments to the scheme. Officers have pushed us to provide additional supporting technical information in order to robustly assess this. The key amendments include a reduction on height on Tavistock Road, initially at 10 stories at Pre-App, followed by a reduction from 9 to 8 stories to mirror the Padcroft scheme, a reduction on the corner from 6 to 5 stories, a redesign of the Winnock Road elevation to emulate the contemporary group of terraced houses, and removal of the communal roof terrace space at the lower levels. Officers agree that these amendments will set a benchmark for good quality design that is expected of this area. Concerns have also been raised with the neighbouring amenity, and we've worked hard with officers to ensure that all new homes will be orientated to exceed the 21 metre separation distance between windows for direct facing habitable rooms. Balconies will include obscure treatments to maintain privacy, and the boundary of the 8th floor roof terrace is set back to avoid overlooking. Proposals will not result in an unacceptable impact in neighbours in terms of daylight sunlight, and all neighbouring amenity spaces continue to pass the overshadowing test, with improvements, as we've heard from your officers tonight, as a result of the scheme for some neighbours. As the officers' report confirms, the scheme is of an appropriate scale and height, and there will be no unacceptable loss of light outlet, privacy or overlooking. Concerns have been raised regarding pressure on the capacity of the local highway network. Officers accept that the proposed scheme will result in an overall net reduction in vehicle trips during peak hours, compared with its existing use. Notwithstanding this agreed position, at your highways officer's request, we have modelled the proposed scheme on the surrounding highway network. This has confirmed that the surrounding junctions have capacity to accommodate traffic demand in peak times and will continue to operate without issue. In summary, the scheme has been revised to address the comments raised, it has been robustly assessed by your officers, who have concluded that it will deliver a sustainable redevelopment of a highly accessible brownfield site, provide a mix of new high-quality homes, deliver one-for-one parking provision, provide a new community use and improvements to the highway, street network and canal, deliver 35% affordable housing which meets the borough's needs, and provide significant financial contributions towards infrastructure investments. Therefore, we urge members to improve this well-considered, policy-compliant scheme, which officers agree would vastly improve the site and offer significant benefits to the area. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions you may have.
No? Okay, no hands raised. Can you just turn the microphone on for me, please? Thank you. As I said in my introductions, the Ward Councillor, Councillor Ahmed Wallana, was intending to be here tonight, but at the last moment a family issue has intervened. He has sent me the text that he was going to read, and I will read it for the record. I speak, and these are his words and obviously not mine. I speak as representative of UC residents who signed a petition opposing development by Redrow to turn the Comag site into high-density housing. Present, the plan as it stands does not fit in with the Winnock Road houses or the surrounding area, as it is overbearing out of character. The proposed reduction to 8 stories from the original 9 is, in my view, still far too high, and the current plans are designed to maximise the build to the boundary of both Winnock Road and Tavistock Road, and will be too imposing and intrusive on the residents of these roads. And while in an ideal world such development was not being considered, it is inevitable that a build of some nature is going to be made here, and that the present Comac building at 3 stories has to date had a negligible effect on the residents of Winnock Road and Tavistock Road, but is at least set back from the road, and that footprint would possibly be acceptable. And more so if the height of the building will reduce to the same or even lower. The other concern is that the building would not be in keeping with the existing Victorian terraced houses in Winnock Road. The facade facing Winnock Road and possibly Tavistock could be made to resemble modern townhouses in appearance, and so fitting in better with the existing houses and not so overbearing. The area is already developed with a high density of apartment blocks, which has created an increase in road traffic, and currently Winnock Road is off limits to large vehicles as it is too narrow to accommodate them. As any increase brought in by the extra vehicles will make the already overloaded roads more clogged up, particularly the junctions with Station Road, which will likely gridlock the area several times each day. To revise the road layout to enable a better flow to the entire area, and unless the suggestions that have been made here are at least taken to a further consultative consideration with emphasis on their implementation by the developer, I would hope the application is refused. Okay, that is all the presentations on this one. Who's going to take me out? Councillor Higgins, a signal. Councillor Oswald, signals. I'll start with Councillor Higgins, then Councillor Edwards. I was thinking you might.
It's nice to be back. I think it's a very, very well designed. I mean, I have to start at that. I think that a lot of effort's being taken into consideration. But there's just one point for me, is that, and I like everything that the architect or the developer has said. They've ticked all the boxes, 80% affordable and all that thing. But it's just 1 story too high. I mean, the picture that's in front of us, I think the side to my left works very well, and if that was 1 story less, that would work very well on that corner. And that's my opinion. So on that note, I wouldn't be able to agree with this application from them.
We'll take this along and see where it goes in a moment. Councillor Oswald, Councillor Dillon, were you indicating as well, or you just know? Yeah, you will. I was just checking that you're on my.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, yeah, it does look all right. It's quite a nice design actually, but I think it stops there really for me. Look, we're not against brownfield development. In fact, we're in favour of it because we think that that's the right thing to do with redundant commercial premises that are no longer going to be commercial premises. I think that's pretty obvious with this site anyway. So we're not against that. But for me, it's the bulk and the size. I just think it's overdeveloped. Councillor Higgins has just said about 1 story too high for him, and I tend to agree with that. In fact, it may be a couple of stories too high for me. I'm not keen on it, Chairman. I don't really like it. I think it's an overdevelopment, and I don't think I'm going to be able to support this. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 2 issues on bulk at the minute. I'm just going to have to keep track of this in a minute, otherwise, Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I won't take up too much time, but I've got a fair bit to say. I agree with colleagues that the development here, it does have some merits. The issue for me is whether or not it has sufficient. And I do believe with the general assessment that it is too much, too large. Key in my mind is the transition from the high street down into the suburban housing and the way that is managed by the development. What this development does is bring forward the 5-story aspect, which at the present in the Tavistock Gardens development is more central and quite a way away from the roads, and this brings the 8 stories right up to the street frontage and makes that very, very impactful in the area. And for me, that is a significant overdevelopment in terms of height. The transition down from what is considered to be an urban centre into what I would argue is a suburban development, and this is something I might ask for some legal advice here or some planning advice on what is an urban development and what is a suburban development, because that, I think, has some bearing in here. I think the transition, particularly on the street corner, is very unsympathetic in terms of height and its relationship to the surrounding streets. So I'm very uncomfortable with the blocking and massing of it. I think it's unsympathetic with the existing nature of the suburban area. With regards to the impact on amenity, I believe I heard being said in the presentation, and I hope I misheard, that there was no impact on the amenity of the residents. And that is not what I pick up from the daylight sunlight report. We're talking in here about quite a hit on a number of houses. And for me, the actual report in some way obfuscates the issue in that it includes the impact on the windows yet to be built to the Tavistock Gardens. Now, forgive me, but my priority here is to the longer standing residents of houses that they've already purchased or have already rented, and the adverse impact that they would have. And I'm unclear from that report of what the impact is, other than some houses are going to lose potentially up to 75% of their windows below the BRE standard. We improved that situation within the report. When they adjust the BRE standard from 0.8, which is a suburban, and I would say is applicable to the houses in Winnock Road, to 0.7 for an urban, hence my request for some clarity on it. And that improves the situation, but even then doesn't remove the impact from those windows in Winnock Road. So without fully understanding what the adverse impact is, I don't know what harm is being caused to existing residents. And in those circumstances, I certainly can't support it. So we have issues here about its impact in size of height, scale, massing in the street scene. I have concerns about its impact on the amenity of residents. I also have some issue with the traffic and the transport assessment. Now, I know that there has been a transport assessment done. What struck me was the sites used, selection sites, out of the TRIX database. And only one of them had a car ratio of 1 or more, which this does. The others were all leaning towards a low car development anyway. What does disappoint me is the proposal that out of the 123 dwellings here, only 7 people will be going to work in the morning by car, and only 7 people will be coming home by car in the evening. Now, that does not strike me as particularly credible. It may be that they all jump onto Crossrail. It may be happening, but my suspicion is that there will be a far greater car utilisation than is presently argued in this report. That being the case, the impact on the road and the junctions then throws into doubt and into question. So I have a number of issues around the transition, the high street to the suburban housing, the block and mass, the unsympathetic transition at the corner. I have concerns about the impact on the residential area, on the residential amenity, particularly of Winnock Road and the houses in Tavistock Road, and I have concerns about the traffic.
I'm going to hold. I'm not going to ring officers in every time because I'd like to just kind of bulk up some of this stuff, if I might, because I've got certain themes are running. One or two people are raising additional issues, but I've got a set of themes that are running here. So I'll ask officers to come back. You were next, and then Councillor Duncan. Councillor Dillon was next, then Councillor Duncan. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how I could bulk it up after Councillor Edwards has spoken. I mean, the CGI is lovely. It looks fantastic, but it's CGI, and they're supposed to be looking lovely, and it's probably quite misleading, I would say. Bulk is the major concern for everybody, and I agree with everyone on that. It's way too much at both ends. To me, it's unsympathetic to what's currently there, and I would move it, obviously prematurely, but as for a refusal on bulk, mass, traffic issues, etc.
We'll tease that out in a moment. I'm trying to get a feel for. I think I know where I am, but I just want to see. Councillor Duncan, you're going to say bulk as well, are you?
No.
Oh, you're not. Oh,
no.
That was disappointment.
I won't attempt to repeat what others have said, but I do agree with the points that have been made by colleagues opposite and also on my side as well. I have those concerns, and I think quite rightly we are asking what is a suburban centre and what rights do we have to demand that character be retained. And we're not hearing that in these developments. Yes, it is a good development. Yes, they have modified it, but this is something that should be in a much, much more urban area than in an outer London local suburban centre. It just simply doesn't fit into the context as far as I'm concerned. I have concerns about traffic, as Councillor Edwards has already said. Don't let's forget that we have HGVs pouring out of Power Day immediately opposite this site, both day and night until January, when hopefully the nighttime ones won't be there any longer. But that already places a huge strain on the roundabout. And in fact, some of the very heavy vehicles and double transporters have to go into the station to turn round in order to come back and make a right turn into Tavistock Road. So I don't know whether any of those factors which introduce hazardous and dangerous conditions for people trying to use the local centre as their normal local centre, whether that's been taken into account. Also, this very dense development is going to place pressure on school places, pressure on health provision. And we know ourselves how difficult that has been, how the council has tried hard to increase the health provision in the area without success. So we're going to load further people onto this system, which is already under great pressure. I know we've dealt with school places, but this is going to place even further pressure on an existing pressurised situation. I understand that if they're going to put in a sprinkler system, that's going to occupy some space, but why go higher? Why not just reduce this down? Why not think in different terms? One thing, of course, that you would expect me to comment on is proposed condition 13, protection from ingress of polluted air, which of course is a bugbear of mine. I do not think that we as a planning committee should be granting approval for residential dwellings, whether it's at this density or not, where you've got to scrub the air before you and your family can breathe it. And I don't think that that's a sustainable kind of development. It's using power that you don't need to. Let it be in a clean air area where you can open the window and you don't have that problem. So I also have concerns about that. And on sunlight, I think the paragraph on page 70, I mean, I thought, is this what we've come to? It sounds positively Dickensian. It says, the BRE guide recommends that at least 50% of the area of each amenity space should receive at least 2 hours of sunlight on 21st of March. The results show that 53% or more of the area of each amenity space will receive at least 2 hours of sunlight on the 21st of March. That is, well, horrific. I can understand people's concerns about this, and I'm afraid that we have to decide for ourselves what kind of development do we want here in Hillingdon. Yes, it's a lovely design, but it really doesn't fit in with this centre. I feel it is out of character for reasons already mentioned, but it's also having impacts on people who've lived here for decades that it shouldn't have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Yarrow, have you got anything additional? Because I've got a couple of, or are you just going to add to what we've already got?
I'm going to add, but purely and simply to say, if the things that we have picked up, the residents picked up as well, and I just want to say very quickly that I made some notes and they were complaining about high density, out of character, overpowering appearance, overdevelopment, gridlock roads, site visit required. Usually it's a village, we're not in London. 5 stories is probably too much. Sneaky planning applications and a traffic rat run. Okay. And I think that we should bear all that in mind when the officers reply to the questions you're going to ask.
I'm going to ask. I'm going to keep this relatively straightforward because I don't need to. For reasons that I think will become obvious in a moment, I'm not planning a site visit. I don't think a site visit will add anything to. I do those when we are looking, we think we've almost got there and we just want to check a few things out. Members have raised some serious issues with this one, and I don't think we need a site visit at this moment, but I'm going to ask for commentary on two matters in particular. Members, all sides of me, have made very clear commentary about, in varying words, but basically this is too tall, too bulky, and we'll work that through and we'll look at that in a moment because that is the context I've got from everybody. I do want to explore though, I'm not picking up on how planning applications are done because they are all appropriately advertised. I'm not getting into that debate. I want to pick up on two debates in particular though because they are relevant and they've come from a couple of places. One is traffic, because I do know this area as well from my working days, and I do know its traffic volume. So I'm interested to hear the justifications for the traffic. I'm also interested to pick up on Councillor Edwards' issue, and in fact you did it as well, Councillor Duncan. Funny enough, I had it highlighted in my notes about this BRE assessment and how we got to where we are. So whoever's taking it, please do. Leave the bulk for the minute. I want the second two first, and then we'll look at bulk.
So, shall Alan?
Well, whoever take it. Alan, are you taking traffic?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. First of all, can we remind ourselves that the previous use of the site was B8 storage and distribution in the newspaper and magazine supply chain. At its peak, it had 200 employees. Trip generation is key to making a proper assessment of the impact the development will have on the surrounding network. The applicants have used the TRIX database and they've assessed 8 sites which we consider are reasonable examples upon which to base the trip generation for this site. These examples that were given through the TRIX database, they're recent, they have similar P-TELs to this development site, and they are all platted developments. The site is in a town centre location with good public transport services, and it's of course in close proximity to West Drayton Railway Station. The developer has been requested to analyse, assess and model the junctions in the vicinity of the site. Perhaps I can use an example being the junction of Tavistock Road, Station Road, and the developers have managed to demonstrate that that junction will work within capacity in 2022. Why is that possible? You might think that that is counterintuitive, but if I can take you back to highlight, it is in a edge of town centre location with good public transport and good local facilities, and please bear in mind that the site was previously B8 storage and distribution in the newspaper and magazine supply business.
Can I just ask one question? I hear that for a moment. Councillor Edwards made a specific reference to the number of people, which I presume you've read some of the supporting documentation on this, who would be presumed to be travelling by car. And he quoted a figure of 7, I remember writing down.
7 drivers.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm just thinking 7 drivers out of 110 units in the morning rush hour.
7 cars.
7 cars out of 110 units. I don't know. There may be some misunderstanding of the figures, but that doesn't seem quite to accord to me, even in a town centre location with...
if I'm reading it right, 6.3.4. Table 6.5.
Are you taking out the report, or are you taking out the...
No, out of the transport
assessment. I thought you might be.
No,
yeah, you've delved into
the papers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, but that's the transport assessment submitted, that's in the online transport assessment.
On the online transport assessment submitted by whoever, I'll find out.
Perhaps I'll take an officer comment on that.
Chairman, and that figure is the result of the interrogation of the TRIX database and the development sites that were the best examples we could find, all of which were outer London examples in Hounslow, even one in Hayes itself. That is where all the factoring up, that's where the number of 7 car trips originates.
Okay, perhaps I bring in the head of planning.
I'm going to make a slight confession. I did prepare and do my own thought processes in case members considered an overturn on this application, so I have come prepared, so I'm not doing this cold. I haven't come prepared on other applications on the agenda, but I have on this particular one.
Not a precedent,
so the strong point I'd wish to emphasise to members is that the National Planning Policy Framework requires that when you're considering highway impacts, that you need to consider whether the adverse impact is a severe impact. And this is very important because it means when you go to appeal, the kind of bar to be in terms of the evidence that needs to be put forward, it's very difficult to sustain highway reasons or refusal unless there's clearly a severe impact. From discussing the highway impacts with Alan Tilley, I'm convinced that the technical analysis is such that officers would not be able to argue a severe impact. I'm convinced that we wouldn't be able to sustain a highway refusal reason at appeal. However, in terms of the impact on the street scene, I will read out policy B13, which says development will not be permitted if the layout and appearance fail to harmonise with the existing street scene or other features of the area which the local planning authority considers it desirable to retain or enhance. Now, the impact on the street scene is a subjective matter, so it's a completely different test, and the sort of burden of proof of the council at appeal is quite different one, and the councillors are quite entitled to take a subjective view on design matters, and obviously councillors have a very detailed understanding of the local street scene, in particular in places such as this, where they've considered a number of applications. So the strong steer I'd be giving is that I think should members wish to refuse this application, officers would be able to support a street scene refusal reason, but not one related to highways impact.
Okay, before I come back on highways, can I just ask the officers to comment, because I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Evans, in a moment, on the sunlight assessment, which at least two have raised.
Okay. So a technical daylight and sunlight assessment was submitted with the application. It indicates that 75% of the windows pass or surpass. I want to confirm to members that existing residents of Winnock Road would not be affected. I've double checked the windows myself. Where windows do fail, they're on the proposed development. However, I must draw attention of members to the fact that the right of BRE recommendation, it's a test. The majority of the windows surpass the recommendations, and it should be noted that whilst all windows do not, in this context, it's one factor, it's a material consideration of many other factors, and this is an urban location as defined by the London Plan. This is indicated under the London Plan density matrix.
Okay, perhaps I'll ask the head of planning for an additional commentary.
I think the officers clarified that it is technically an urban location, but I think the way to answer this question and address the point that was raised by Councillor Edwards is what in effect officers have done is they've looked at the massing and bulk of the existing Comag factory building and then tried to ensure that the proposed block has less impact in terms of daylight and sunlight than the existing factory building. So the positive response from the BRE consultant in terms of neighbour impact it is effectively then benchmarking against existing building. So I hope that's a slightly clearer explanation.
Councillor Edwards, can I just come back to you because you started both of those conversations off?
I will come back on 2 points. Firstly would be on the council.
I think the burden of proof is on the council. I think the head of planning will clarify that. I think he's gone up.
I mean, to put this bluntly, at appeal, we just, for schemes that involve flatted developments of 10 flats and above, we just are not winning appeals when there's a high-rise refusal reason. However, when it comes to more subjective issues like street scene, we're in a much stronger position because the policies, the way they're worded, because they're requiring an enhancement of street scenes, protection of local character, it's much easier for us to then argue such a case at appeal. But because the MPPF has this requires there to be a severe adverse impact, that is very difficult for us to justify at appeal.
So we've got to show a severe adverse impact.
We don't show that there's not going to be one.
The other way around.
So the simple steer I'm giving is officers, I don't think we'll be able to defend a high-rise refusal reason, notwithstanding, I do appreciate all the concerns been outlined, but officers quite simply wouldn't be able to sustain and successfully argue a high-rise related refusal reason. However,
but
I think I've explained the other issue.
Just for the benefit of those who may not have heard these debates before, we have been down this road a few times, and this is an area that we have certainly struggled to frame refusal reasons around before on developments on many occasions, so it's not new territory.
The one point I would emphasise is that we have achieved a one-to-one parking ratio, which is often a battle on a number of sites. So I wouldn't. There's a separate danger that at appeal the applicant starts to revise the parking ratios to reduce the chip generation figures, which I don't think we'd necessarily wish to happen. And the other point I think before members make any decision is they do need to bear in mind it's 35% policy compliant affordable housing, and an inspector will put quite a lot of weight on that. So that will swing the pendulum in favour of an approval at appeal, notwithstanding any issues decisions members make.
I completely agree. I wouldn't wish to argue for one moment that but for the traffic this is perfect and therefore we should reject it on the grounds of traffic. It is just yet another little bit that is an argument against it. The more substantive bits for me are the size and bulk. And I need to come back again on the assertion that there is no adverse impact on the amenity of people in Winnock Road. And I read directly from the report that it says 25% of the windows fall short of the standard, 81 windows out of 334. These include windows at 1 to 7 and 9 Winnock Road and windows at Tavistock Gardens. So it's very clearly within the report that it's saying this will adversely impact 1 to 7 and 9 Winnock Road.
I think the officer argument is they're already impacted by the existing COMAG building, but that's the argument I'm hearing back. So
No, the report's saying that the change makes it adverse because it takes the existing as it stands with the present development, and that is within the tables, and then it shows what will happen once the development happens. And it is that change that is adverse. That's my understanding of that.
Well, let's see what the head of plan.
Can I just clarify? Some of the figures you cited don't that they concern the impact of windows within the development from other aspects of the development. I think the reason I gave a rather simple explanation is that the key issue here is quite a simple one. Officers have looked at the bulk of the existing COMAG building, have looked at the proposals and have taken the view that the direct neighbour impact, because there's a greater separation in terms of the distance between the two proposals, and taking into account the massive existing proposed, officers have taken the view that it is an improvement in terms of the impact, and that ground alone, that's why we're saying that there isn't an adverse residential impact, because it's an improvement.
I understand. I'll come back and say that my reading of this daylight assessment does not agree with
we're
that.
not going to win that one at the minute.
But I think it's important, though, that if this is an objection, that it's included.
I have a suggestion in a moment, but just let me.
There is a conclusion at the end of the BRE report where because it is a qualified daylight and sunlight consultant, where they say that the development is acceptable in an urban location.
In the round, and on balance.
But I'm sure if it went to appeal, the applicant would say we've got a qualified consultant and they've said it's acceptable, and that then creates a difficulty for us as officers, which is why if members were going to refuse it, I'd be steering you towards the street scene visual amenity issue, because that's the one I think we could defend as officers, not the other issues that are being raised.
The head of planning has been very clear in his guidance. Can I ask Councillor Higgins to come in? I think Councillor Duncan wanted to come back. But I'll take Councillor Higgins and then you, if I may.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. We could debate this all day, really. And
we're not going to.
Exactly. And unfortunately,
we're well into the night now.
Exactly. The point here is that transport we will not win on. We won't win on the daylight because of the site was before. So my suggestion is that let's cut to the chase. And the reason for refusal will be bulk and density and street scene, and that's what I would like to.
Okay, we'll hold that, because that's where I think we're agreed on that in a moment. I just want to see if I can get anything else. Councillor Duncan.
I would agree with that, but also add in amenity. Just on this point about what is urban and what is suburban, we're an outer London borough, and a quarter of a mile west of this site, we're in rural, outer London. We're no longer in outer London. We're into green bus routes and villages and rural Buckinghamshire. So what is suburban? We couldn't get more outer than this centre. I really hope, maybe this is something for another place, but we do need to make our position clear in this borough about what we are, because it seems our identity is being swamped by others. I accept what you say about the traffic. I know that they're difficult. I know that the roundabout already doesn't work on occasions, and we have had horrific hold-ups, mainly caused by power-day lorries and difficulties of heavy goods vehicles moving, but nevertheless it still holds everything up, and for periods of 15 to 20 minutes, which I regard as quite long. And all right, it may not be a total breakdown of the system, but it certainly shows that things aren't working. And if you're going to put more pressure onto that, then that's simply not going to help. The fact is, it needs to be taken into account that we are an outer London borough and people are very dependent upon the car. That's why there was some relaxation of parking standards for Hillingdon. We've got a major employment generator, the airport, and people often have to use their cars to travel there because they're having to travel at unsociable hours. So to compare us with a development or a traffic situation in another part of the country, it may be comparable, but it may not, because there are particular factors in Hillingdon that maybe have not been taken into account in any detail. But I'll park that. I do accept that there would be quite a lot of work that had to be done on that. But I will just say that a few years ago, residents themselves did 24-hour traffic surveys, and it certainly showed an awful lot of cars coming down Tavistock Road. So I'll say no more. That was the reality. Sunlight definitely is a factor, whether it's new residents or existing residents. I think people's right to light, there were even ancient rights to light. Surely if we got into a 21st century where the air has to be scrubbed and you're only allowed 2 hours of sunlight a day, we're going backwards here. So I'm sorry about this. I appreciate officers have worked hard on this. I appreciate that the developers have done all they can to make it compliant, but it simply is not. Okay, I think I know where we're going. We're going with a refusal in a moment, and Councillor Higgins has started to frame one, and we will. Councillor Oswald, you wanted to come in, and I want to then draw this to a close, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't want to drag this out too much longer. I think we are where we are with it, and I think it is what it is. Councillor Dinner's moved refusal. I'll second it, Chairman.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we've got our reasons clearly on the table, because otherwise I will get some looks from my left in a moment if I don't. The guidance of the head of planning is that we can sustain a reason based on size, bulk, residential impact, street scene, visual impact, street scene, and in particular on Winnock Road, yeah.
Yes, the because of the distinctive visual appearance of that road, that terrace of cottages on Winnock Road, I think we'd almost certainly be drawing attention to that through any appeal statement. So I think if you're going to refuse this, you'd reference that in the refusal.
Okay, so are we happy to delegate that to Head of Planning to draft on the basis I think we've given a pretty clear impact of what we're after?
Character of the area, I don't know if you included that in that, but the character of the area would encompass sort of wider reference.
I think the guidance from my right says the Head of Planning would be more comfortable if the Chairman, if myself and the Labour lead see it before it's finally put down, if that's all right, Councillor Dillon? Yeah.
So is that all right to include character?
Well, I think character is where we were in character, and that's why I was drawing attention to Winnock Road and the street scene.
Good. And how about residential amenity?
The Head of Planning is guiding no.
Yeah, so the guidance I'm giving is basically saying that I think we could sustain refusal reason at appeal concerning visual amenity. My problem comes with residential amenity or highways, because there are technical studies that I think it will be difficult for us to sustain a refusal reason and argue against those.
Even though we've heard from people that they're looking into their bedroom windows now from existing developments, and this is close to be even more.
But the size bulk thing would bring that back, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If we take down the size and the bulk of this, the whole thing changes and becomes very different. It also takes down the number of people. It takes everything.
It's not against it in principle, Chairman.
Well, no, in principle there's something going to go on here. It's a brownfield site. It's no longer suitable for industrial. There is a building going to go on here at some point. Okay. I have proposers and seconders. We're all clear that this is we're overturning the officer's recommendation with the final wording to be agreed outside. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Unanimously refused. Thank you very much. I now go to item 8, former garage site, 1832 Malmesbury Close, Penner, page 81. Whose is this?
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 relates to former garage site of Malmesbury Close. The site is positioned to the side and rear of residential flats on Malmesbury Close and has no street frontage. The vehicular access will be provided off Malmesbury Close. So this is the site. It relates to existing garages here. Vehicular access is off Malmesbury Close. At the moment there is existing pedestrian access off Four Close. This will no longer be this pedestrian access. This denotes site ownership. Here's some aerial plans of the existing site, and this is access into the site of Malmesbury Close, and these are the existing garages. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing garages and construction of a staggered row of 5 two-storey 4-bedroom residential dwellings. Each residential unit will comprise of 100 square metres of amenity space bar 1, which will be 96 square metres. A total of 11 car parking spaces is being provided, including 1 disabled parking space. And yes, the benefits of the scheme is the proposal improves the appearance of the site through removal of the dilapidated garages. It would introduce landscaping and surveillance into a secluded and vulnerable site and reduce antisocial behaviour. The design and appearance of the buildings and their layouts and the plots are consistent with surrounding residential development and would not result in an unacceptable harm to amenity of neighbouring residents. On this slide, we have referenced the distances between the proposed units and the neighbouring dwellings. Obscurely glazed windows are facing this development here, which is actually off Salisbury, where the distance is 15 metres but it's not 21, and as such, there's some innovative windows here. So these are obscurely glazed, where it's close to the site, situated 15 metres away, and these bedroom windows are clear on the right hand side. This is the elevation plan. So the proposal provides good quality living environment, and members officer recommendation is to approve. I'll take any questions.
Yep.
Oh, I would also like to draw members' attention to the addendum, which clarifies clarifies the highway comments from the highways officer and amends condition 2 and provides clarification.
Okay, the head of planning.
We've jumped from a high density development to a very low density development.
Well,
so I just mentioned, draw members' attention, the density of this development is only 33 dwellings per hectare, which is a very low density for any site coming forward for housing. And obviously, members would have noted that each dwelling has 2 parking spaces and 1 visitor space. So there is a high level of parking provided. Thank you, Chairman.
And large gardens. We have a petition in objection on this one. Ms. Rayo, are you wishing to speak? No.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not totally as well prepared as I should be, because
You'll be fine.
inviting this on the train on the way to work.
Well, that's a lot of people do. If you turn the microphone on, though, press the red button on the middle. Button on the middle, grey button. That one. Then he won't. Go. That's it.
Okay.
We're
Well,
live.
I'm Heidi Rao. I live around the corner, but I have family and friends who live there, and I'm representing the people who signed. Basically, it all looks very good on paper, but it's not quite as straightforward when you actually know the site. The parking's great for the number of houses, but to get those houses in, if you have the photo of the green at the front, you're going to lose about 20 parking spaces, so the existing residents will have nowhere to park because they park all the way around that green. To be able to use it to access and egress the site, all those residents will now have nowhere to park. It sort of amounts to about a 20% loss of. Okay, I've lost my page 1. Okay. Yeah, there's 5 cars park outside number 18 to 32, which fronts that green. If you have that as the egress for the site, because you're making it a one-way in-out system, they won't have anywhere to park. On the entry to the site, there's about 10 people who park, say 8 when there's bigger vehicles. To get access to the site, you're going to have to basically cancel all the residents parking for them. You're going to lose, 12, 10 in the garage area park, 12 people park outside 2 to 16. So basically, around that whole triangle, you've got 2 rows by 2 to 16, 1 row between 18 and 32, 5 park in the garage area, and every single resident around that whole green is going to have 0 parking, apart from the 2 parking bays in the plans that don't actually exist. So to facilitate these plans, to get access, you've given the new people 11 spaces, but taken 25, 30 away from the existing residents. The aerial photo must have been taken when everyone was out on a day trip or something. So it's a small cul-de-sac. They'll have no parking. The people that live between 18 to 32, their front gardens aren't marked out on these plans, but their front gates are going to fall straight into that very narrow egress road, which really will be now like a roundabout. And some block pavings aren't even in the plans there. The block pavings outside numbers 14 and 16, they're not really going to be helpful because the cars will be coming out round a blind corner there. The houses are on paper great, but if you look at the dimensions of them, they're not really going to be beneficial as family homes because there's too many bedrooms. The living space is within the minimum required, but it's not. There's nowhere to put a three-piece suite and a table. The kitchen is a tiny kitchen that would be serviceable for a two-bedroom property. Then we have, okay, I'm losing it. And this is on YouTube, damn. It's like, it's an overdevelopment, like the houses, there's too many bedrooms, not enough parking. The gardens are tiny, they're all fan-shaped. It's like they're contrived to fit within the minimum meterage. And the minimum meterage, I think, is negligible because once the garages come down, which are now the current boundaries, they are now going to steal boundary strips from the adjacent properties because they will rerun the fence line to where it was 30, 40 years ago to facilitate the correct dimensions for the garden. Back to the dimensions of the houses. They have no bin storage. Once you fit in every white good and everything you need in the kitchen, there's not even going to be any storage in the kitchens. For a large family, these houses are very, very perfect for HMOs, however. Like, not a lot of living, but a lot of bedroom and shower rooms.
Okay, I think we've made time.
Okay, I've missed all of that.
Well, I have to be fair to everybody, and I apply the same rules to all. I have one question.
Could I just mention, basically it's the parking.
Yeah, can I come back to parking with you?
On your thing here, it's on your densities, you compare to Chippenham.
Hang on.
And three-bedroom properties.
The parking ratio on this is as good as the world's going to get. To get 2 per unit is where we need to be. So we won't be able to. I wouldn't want to unpick parking ratios. What I just want to clarify with you, you were talking about parking for existing residents, which is where I just wanted to clarify. Are existing residents parking in front of those garages now?
Yes. They're using it as a car park because there's not enough space in the road.
Okay. So they're using a car park area which isn't theirs to use?
In addition, it's usually visitors and a few, so there's maybe 5 cars at the most there when there's visitors. They use, the whole of the green is chock-a-block parked all the way around the green.
But this is an existing access road to those garages now, isn't it?
Yes, and there is room to get to them when you've got cars parked either side. Outside numbers 2 to 16, there are cars parked in front of the houses and cars parked across the green.
So
and there's room for them to get in.
I need to get this in my head because committee members are going to get very confused in a minute if they're not already. And they've had a fair long session of this at the moment. Are you saying to me at the moment that if I had a garage in that existing block, I know they're fairly thingy, but I wouldn't actually be able to get up the access road to it?
Oh, you would. There's space to get to the garages.
Can I clarify for you, Chairman? I think what the resident's saying that there is the road is always kept clear, but residents use the garage.
No, I got that bit, but there was a suggestion the road was blocked so you couldn't access.
I don't think that was what you were implying, was it?
Okay, right, okay. So, existing residents are using the redundant space in front of the garages as an unofficial parking area?
A few.
Well, I just want to clarify what's going on, and then we work from there. Okay, I think I've got that. Yeah. Okay, I think we're good. Unless members have got anything else. No. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Could you turn the microphone off for me? Thank you. Okay, there are, this is council scheme, so there's no developer to put it forward. There There's no ward councillors wishing to bend our ear, so... Yep, please, Councillor Higgins, take me away.
It's one of those ones that it does work, unfortunately. And I do understand what resident is saying about how small they are, but actually I visited a friend of mine and I went into his house and I couldn't believe how small it was, and it was smaller than that. So
I think the houses are more policy compliant, as are the gardens.
Exactly.
So we've nowhere to go on that.
And the only thing I had was the clarity of it's an in and out from Mulvey. Is that correct? Is that there's?
Yes, there's only one access to it.
Because on the actual location plan, you sort of seem to got a pathway that comes around the back somewhere, but
no, the pathway's out.
Yeah, good.
So
Okay.
it's in and out from Mulvey.
You know, obviously, again, it's one of those ones. Half does this, half does that. I'm going to have to go with officer's recommendation on this one. So,
okay. Anybody got any other views on this one? Yeah. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned that in order to make it work, we have to have obscure glazing to bedroom windows.
Part obscure glazing.
Part obscure glazing.
So if I can give a simple explanation, it's an oriel window, so one side of it is obscure glaze, the other side is clear, and because the clear bit is angled this way rather than that way, it means that the aspect is away from other people's windows.
And does that window then provide, which is I think the councillor's real question, sufficient light for those who occupy that bedroom? That's exactly where you were going, wasn't it, Councillor?
The plans were revised because initially, I don't know if members see the two right-hand units, they had a projecting gable feature. So officers got that removed from the first three units because what it was doing is it meant that the outlook from the clear glazed window was directly facing a metre away the gable feature, thus blocking light. So the revised plan overcomes that issue, so I'm satisfied that there is, and it's quite a large window, that I've no doubts that this proposal would meet all BRE standards, and but by
not doing BRE again tonight.
By some margin.
Okay.
The point is that the houses were built, the garages were built to serve the houses. The garages have become, you know, the rents increased and then haven't been maintained.
Not big enough for modern cars, probably.
That's right, yeah. And but there's still a need for parking in the area, and at the moment residents seem to have arranged matters so that they can park their cars, and this is going to upset that arrangement. And I don't know what our view is about that, where we're actually taking away potential and possible, and in fact they are using it at the moment for informal parking, not in the garages but outside them, in front of them.
Can I make a comment that probably wouldn't be popular with local residents? The residents all want to park around the triangle, so the triangle has parking stress, but the wider area doesn't have parking stress. It does have parking availability. It's just that everybody wants to park right in front of their house, and the way the surrounding neighbourhood is configured, it creates a pinch point around that triangle. But it's not as if there isn't places one can't park on streets. It's just they just wouldn't necessarily. Yeah, it's the triangle that's where the congestion happens.
Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, we had a similar scheme like this in Nelson Road in the East Ward a little while ago. Similar sort of thing. Yeah, we did. And I think we felt that was a bit tight, but the thing is, it works, and this works as well. So I'm going to second the proposal.
Okay, I've got a proposal and a second. Unless Councillor Edwards got anything.
I don't wish to trip it up because I think it's a good development, a good use of space. I would just like to clarify one inconsistency between the plans, which one set of plans is showing all the windows, oriel windows, as being obscure, whereas actually the elevations only show the...
No, there's a comment that implies they all are. That is the correct version of.
I appreciate that, but at the moment it can be read either way. But that's an by the by. My consideration would be around pedestrian access to this little estate. At the moment you've got 5 family dwellings there, plus probably 3 others that will access this down that drive area, which is shared by a number of cars. And it's about what consideration and additional safety measures need to be brought in, because it is likely to have young kids playing outside behind a fence when they drive in. Have we given consideration to demarcating a pavement? Have we put in a speed hump right at the point that slows people down? It is that safety issue for me.
As it says in the report, the space would be created, would be designed so it read as shared space, and that would give a message to drivers that they can expect to encounter perhaps people walking around, children cycling, and that would give the message to drivers to calm the speed of their traffic, calm their speed.
And also the bulk of the people entering would be the people who live there as well. I think that's probably answered. I've got a proposer, I've got a second. I don't think there's anything else coming on this one. The head of planning is just nodding to my right to suggest that we'll give him delegated authority to beef up 7, which is the obscured glazing.
Relates to the obscured glazing, but it's our general condition. Because this is a bespoke
it wouldn't be any harm.
proposal, if you could give me delegation authority to strengthen that, so it's
I think that makes sense.
Proposal.
All those in favour, please clearly show. Where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm going to abstain because I do have reservations.
Okay.
About the
Well,
safety.
6 and an abstention is fine by me. That one's approved. I'm going to move on. I would say to members we have been going close to 2 hours. I'm going to suggest we'll take a break in a moment. Can I just see, I've got a couple of, we may get through 1 or 2 reasonably quickly in a minute, which might just speed us up. So can I just take another 1 or 2? Item 9, 4850 Station Road. Before anybody tells me it's not their favourite development in the world, the problem we have with it, as the head of planning would outline in a moment to you, is that this is a renewal of an application that was approved by major applications, and there have been no housing policy changes since. So that kind of backs us into a very tight corner. And I just preface that before I ask officers to do you a long, thrill. Well, I'm suggesting not I be guided by you.
Through you, Chairman, I will go with officer organisation. I think we're all very aware of this site. We've seen it a number of times, so I don't think it's really need for us to
seconding,
flog a doodle.
Right, all those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you, that one's approved. Ooh. Right, I can't do the same with the next one. Ansell Garden Centre, Holloway Lane. Do we want to take this one and then look whether we want a break or not? Or do you need a break now? Okay, in that case, can we do 5? Can you make 5 minutes? No, I meant a 5-minute break rather than... 5-minute break, 5 to 9, I'll reconvene, please. Hey, we are, as Councillor Higgins works his way back, we're fully assembled. Can we have Ansell Garden Centre, Holloway Lane, page 141?
Thank you, Chair. Item 10 relates to Ansell Garden Centre on Holloway Lane. The application site is located within the green belt between Heathrow Airport to the south and West Drayton to the north. The site accommodates a garden centre and associated car parking. The majority of the garden centre buildings were recently destroyed and damaged beyond repair by a fire, and this application proposes to consolidate the previous buildings. So here's a picture of the garden centre that was destroyed by a fire, and currently the garden centre is being run, but it's only outdoor sales, and it's operating from a little hut. So this application this is the existing site here, and this application would consolidate the buildings on the existing site, and there is a little addition here. However, it's well screened and it's well set back from the road. The proposal would not have an impact on the green belt. Ample car parking is provided and maintained as per existing, and the proposal is for recommendation for approval. But I would also like to draw members' attention to the addendum item, which includes an additional condition relating to SUDs, albeit quite a lengthy one. There's also some clarification on conditions, updating condition 5, removal of condition 4, as construction management plan is considered unnecessary for this, and clarification on some of the other conditions. Officer recommendation is for approval. I'm happy to take any questions.
No petition, Councillor Higgins.
Okay, officer's recommendation.
Councillor Duncan, then Councillor Dillon.
Why is there a two-storey building included in this, please?
So, it's part of the garden centre. This is the two-storey element of the building. Here's an outline of the existing building, outlined in black here.
Building before the fire?
Yes, building before the fire, the one that was displayed as destroyed. It is a very minimal increase. GLA were also consulted, our in-house officers were also consulted. It's considered not to have an impact on the openness of the green belt. It is very modest increase in height, and the benefits of the scheme is that it consolidates the existing sprawl of buildings and brings them into one place. It's well screened. It would feature a green wall, and for that reason it's not considered to harm or have a negative impact on the green belt.
Councillor,
This is at the rear of the site, you're saying, yeah.
Councillor Dillon, you're seconding.
Just being pedantic again.
Please.
No. It's just around. I can't read the detail of the plan, so I don't know where dog grooming is mentioned, whether it's defined. But the conditions do talk about restricting dog grooming to its existing size, but it doesn't then state what that size is under condition 7. It's whether or not the head of planning should look at conditions 7 and 10 together to see whether or not they might be tied.
It must be. Is it on the plan?
Yeah, it is, but this is also a picture of the existing dog grooming parlour, which is being retained.
I've no problems. I couldn't see the detail of it on
Okay.
Fine.
Seconded. All those in favour, please show. That one's through. Thank you. Right. I move to Access House and agenda item 11, page 169. Still some public interest. We're not.
Thank you, Chair. So, Access House is an application that relates to a site situated on Bath Road. It's currently used as a car park. This building here is Access House, and this is the adjacent car park. The building here is not subject to this application, but a bit of history. Prior approval was given from office to residential, and then subsequently an increase of units through an extension. So overall there are 71 units. This car park was proposed to be used as car parking for Access House, but the applicant has indicated that this is surplus to requirement. The application is for a 128-bedroom hotel, over 5 stories. This is a previously refused scheme, so in August 2017, an application was refused for a hotel with 7 stories along Bath Road and 3 stories. This was an innovative solution to minimise impact on Doghurst Terrace, but our officers felt it was inappropriate. This is the revised proposal, so this is the site from Bath Road, and this is the site from Egerton Way. Here's the ground floor plan, site plan, which has been revised to include coach parking and appropriate servicing in the form of a loading bay. So these are plans relating to the site. At ground floor level, there'll be a restaurant and a bar. The proposal is considered appropriate. The revised proposal is considered appropriate in its location. It would make efficient use of the site. Car parking is reduced for residential units from 71 to 50. The car parking, the transport assessment has submitted, a statement has been submitted which confirms that the existing car parking sites are underused. This site also has a PTAR rating of 4. So, yes, it has a PTAR rating of 4, so it's considered appropriate in this context. Officers consider the benefits of the scheme, the fact that 50 car parking spaces for existing residential units are retained, are considered appropriate. I would finally draw members' attention to the addendum item. The applicant would like to draw members' attention to the Section 106 requirements that officers have placed, which restricts the applicant from charging additional there's been additional representation from surrounding residents and residents of existing Axis House. Officers consider that charges are considered, removing charges for car parking for residents of Axis House is appropriate and necessary to making this development acceptable, especially given that there will be a loss of 21 car parking spaces, and to prevent additional parking pressure on the surrounding residential terraces. So, on that basis, subject to Section 106 and appropriate conditions, and subject to amendment, the amendments outlined in the addendum, officers' recommendation is for approval.
You want to start me off, Councillor Higgins?
In principle, the building thing, I'm not really that. I don't think I have any interest in it.
Hotel on the Bath Road.
Yeah, exactly. Blah, blah, blah. But Eglinton Way, that it's just there on the plans. It's trying to say that there's 2 lanes of traffic and there's parking bays there already. There's no way a coach would get down that. I just want someone to clarify that, please. I think we can. Councillor Edwards has brought it up as a picture.
I have raised this one already, so I'm sure officers have got an answer somewhere for me. Whoever.
I'm aware as part of their transport statement, all the relevant tracking diagrams have been done, and officers are satisfied that the hopper bus would be able to go down Egerton Way, and the final revised plans actually included a parking bay for coaches. At one point there was a waterfall feature which had been raised as one of the points of objection from residents of Axis House that it might cause a noise issue. The applicant has omitted that from the plans, and that has actually freed up a bit of space to enable a coach bay to be fully fitted within the site. I know Zanab will be able to point out exactly where that coach bay is. Yeah.
Sorry, through you, Chairman. I really do think officers should have a look at this, really, because
it's a Google Earth view, and it could be that you're going to develop the road.
You can see that honestly, show it to the Chairman.
Well, it takes away existing parking, which is no wonder that people in Axis House don't park in the road where it's charged if they can park in the street for free, and you'll be taking that away. This is it, yeah.
I would like to, can I respond to this issue? So, Okay. This has been considered by officers and the applicant. We've discussed this at length. There is a Section 106 clause relating to £30,000 towards car parking survey. The reason for this is because as part of this proposal, the applicant will need to seek a traffic management order. They're going, as part of the package of works, they're proposing public realm improvement. The surface and the treatment of Egerton Way will change. It's no longer going to look like this or remain like this. They will need to go through appropriate highways processes, and this is included. This is why there is an onerous Section 106 clause and agreement to address this. And our highways officer has looked at the revised plans and is content that a coach would be able to reverse comfortably into the service bay and reverse back out onto Egerton Way, subject to the improvements. The final public realm, it will be delivered by a approved contractor but carried out by the applicant, so it won't be a cost to the council. I hope that answers the question.
For the head of planning or something else to add?
There's one clincher issue that I could add. So I was actually at the pre-app meeting where Egerton Way was discussed, and one of the interesting issues that came up is because of the lack of parking controls there, it's actually been used by taxi drivers, so it's not just local residents. So the benefit of this Section 106 clause is it enables a scheme that actually puts the residents first. So I think that's actually the key selling point.
Okay. Anybody got anything else on this one? Recommendations? Seconded?
I'll second it, Chairman.
As varied by the addendum, of course. Absolutely. All those in favour, please clearly shout. Thank you. That's that one done. At 12, I have to leave, so I'm going to move to 13, which is land opposite 59 to 60 Hillingdon Road, Uxbridge. This is coming back to us following a deferral on 25th of October. I think the explanations on the front page explain and answer members' queries, so unless members need a presentation.
No, the questions we had have been answered, and I move the officer's recommendations.
And I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favour, please clearly shout. Thank you, that one's approved. And whilst I'm on a roll, I get to Wellington House, which is a prior approval, and of course we all know that our hands are... The only thing I would say is that the flat sizes on this do look reasonable for a prior approval. I may have other issues with it, but does anybody need a presentation given that our hands are so firmly tied? No. Somebody proposed. Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Thank you, Councillor Dillon, for seconding. All those in favour, please clearly shout. Right. Done. Right, we only need item 12, and I am leaving you now. So I've done pretty well to get you to 9:10. Let's see what you can do with it now.
So long.
Right. No.
Okay, turn to agenda item 12, Ruislip High School.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to, thank you, Chair. Moving on to item agenda 12. This relates to Ruislip High School. The application seeks full permission for works associated with the expansion of Ruislip High School. The proposal involves the provision of a 3-storey linked building which will be located on the northeastern side, which is here. And this would be to accommodate a 7th form entry from a 6th form entry. The increase of students would be 186, and there would be an increase in 17.5 full-time members of staff. The applicant has advised that there is a forecast need for 8 new form of entry for secondary schools by 2019 across the borough, taking into account the committed development at Abbotsfield and Swakely schools. For secondary school planning purposes, the borough is divided into north and south, which is divided by the A40. And there is a particular need in this location, and there is also a need and a duty on local authorities to ensure we provide education for children in administrative area. The school expansion programme is part of meeting that legal requirement for the borough. The proposal would not result in an unacceptable impact on visual amenities of the school site and the surrounding area. It's not considered the proposal would have a detrimental impact on neighbouring occupiers. The proposal was supported by a transport assessment to mitigate measures on the local highway network. This is considered to be appropriate. We have requested further flood management and water management, which the head of planning will cover. The proposal overall is considered to comply with the local plan policies and London plan policies, and so this is a proposal, just talking members through it. So here is this element is the extension. Just to make note that the reason this is 3 stories, we understand that there is going to be some impact, but it's not a detrimental impact, is because we want to ensure that the school playground is sufficient for the and this is the best way of making use of the site. It accommodates new facilities, new classrooms and staff facilities. Subject to the update from Head of Planning in the addendum, the officer's recommendation is to approve.
If I can just highlight to members, there is one issue with this site in that the surrounding land has had issues with flooding. So it's not actually correct to the addendum. It's just that the report, the formatting, the recommendation should say that the council enter into section 106 agreement, and the first head of term, which is actually shown as 2A at the top of page 206, that should be within the list of the heads of terms. So it is there. It's just somehow ended up out of order. So that head of term is key, because that head of term means the Council's Flood and Water Management Officer is happy. So it's just to say, if you can just give me delegated authority to reformat it, obviously, so that that would normally be number 1, and then it would follow in sequence. Thank you, Chairman.
Colleagues, comments, discussion? Councillor Hankins, and then Councillor Duncan.
I just agree with recommendations on this.
Okay, I think you were picked at the post by Councillor Duncan, who's moved the officers.
I'll
You seconding?
second it, yeah.
Show of hands then, please, on this one. Everybody, thank you.